Welcome to Larp Academia, and I sincerely apologize. I have neglected to talk about the obstacles to Vampire the Masquerade. Now, like our first obstacles video, we will be following 4 criteria: gear, attire, experience, and roleplay. These will be based on, monetary amounts for attire and gear, but for experience and roleplay, they're a little bit different. We'll get into it more as we cover those areas. Now on to the topics at hand. Gear. Well, what gear do you need for Vampire the Masquerade? If you want to have a toy blade, you could possibly bring your own pocket knife or something. If they allow it on the premise in which you play, you could bring your own toy gun, and you could get something for an inexpensive cost at Walmart or any other shopping center around you. It's fairly simple. Gear is not an issue. Attire is a slightly bigger issue. You see, I'm not wearing clothes that would be worn every day. No, I'm wearing what I would want to wear as a prince to my Elysium. Now, I wore this before I was a prince because this is who I wanted to be. I am a Ventru, a true blue blood who is made of money. And that helped me buy my way into being prince in the position of power that I attained. You can also have different attire based on whatever you need to fit your character. Do you really want vampire teeth? You can. Do you want to have a hump as a Nosferatu? Well, you could take a pillow and push it back there. It's a little bit more difficult than doing nothing, but you could spend money on it, or you could find many household items to give you your attire. Attire is not a big obstacle to Vampire the Masquerade. There are, however, 2 obstacles which end up being the biggest issues for new players. In fact, people have horror stories of their own Larps, where they'd go in and say that there was an issue here and there, and in Vampire it's no different. There are issues in Vampire the Masquerade, and they primarily come from experience and roleplay. Now, for experience, the biggest issue that you will find is not player ability. No. You could come into a game, start as a level 1, and someone else could have played a different vampire game and could have had more experience and is able to play a little bit better. But that's not what I'm talking about. There are 2 facets to experience which cause problems in Vampire. The first one is sheerly attendance. If you attend Vampire the Masquerade, then you are going to possibly be more integral to the plot, and the storyteller will most likely think of you a little bit more when they are designing their own machinations. This happened to me when I, of course, being the prince, or at the early time on attempting to become the prince, I had to show up every week or as many weeks as I could, and sometimes there were family obligations or something else happening, but I was there the most out of everyone else. I started to notice that my character was more in the limelight of storylines. I didn't like this personally, but I was there most of the time. And while being there, I created my own faction around the prince, and there are other people who create their own factions. You could go into a game and you could find that there is the Prince faction, the Anti-Prince faction, the Anarchy faction, and the, we like everyone faction, the freelancers. You could go in and find different factions. It doesn't matter what factions there are. The point is that factions could already be formed. The other problem with experience is that, unlike some other LARPs, if you go into Vampire and you are going in as a new player and you decide, I am going to be the best investigator there is, someone could have investigation be their secondary thing, and they could be known for it. They'll probably be taken up more on investigative missions more than you, and if you go on them, then you will be second fiddle. And that is unfortunately the truth of it. This is where some players can get fed up because they are told they have to join factions, figuratively and literally, where they have to play as a faction or they can't play, or they have to play as a faction, or, it's going to be difficult for them to actually play the game. Now, the experience issue depends on your group. If you're just starting a game and you have a small amount of people, then experience shouldn't be an issue for you. It should be a slight bit of a problem, even if you're a few weeks late getting into it, but it's not going to be that big of a deal. If you go into a game that's been running for about 6 months and it's a small group, you could still get in. You could still find your niche spot. You could still be useful. And in fact, I would highly suggest that you look at our article describing how to create a proper character in Vampire the Masquerade. But if you are joining a large group of 20 or more people and it's been going on for more than a year, possibly 2 years, this is something to take a second look at, as much as I personally hate to say it, because everyone's experience is off the roof compared to yours, and in a level sense to some games, since it's easy to equate to most people, you're joining as a level 1 with level 12s. When they reach level 13, you will reach level 2. When they reach 13 and a half, you will reach level 3. Essentially, you will be insignificant forever in that giant group, and you won't even be able to find a specialty. You won't even be able to do anything significant. So, I would take a look at this when you're trying to go into a group, and maybe see if they're looking to reset the clock or reset everyone's characters, because experience is a huge issue with new players at times, especially for those giant groups. Now, the next issue is roleplay. When you get into Vampire the Masquerade, you are going to roleplay, obviously. We don't have some other crutch to rely on, like combat or just rolling skill checks or whatever else that most games would have. No. You are going to act as your character. You are going to embody your character. Whether you're a proper Ventru or some mangy gangrel, you are whoever you have chosen to be. Now, the extent of roleplay depends on the group. You could roleplay, and oh yes, I'm a Ventru, it's great, but I do need to check on a few things here and there. Yeah, okay. Alright, back in the game. What? Yes, I'd like to make a skill check. This is a bit more loose roleplay, where you are going and, yes, playing a character, but you don't need to have any particular voice, or you don't need to have any particular accents, any real in-game commitment. You can be more loose. There are, however, far more hardcore role players. Now, those role players demand that you are always in character. If I am looking at my phone for whatever reason, I am looking at my phone in character, which in 5th edition could be bad. But even in previous editions, you're looking on your phone, and if they ask what you're doing, you have to hide it and make up an excuse, or you have to say something else that you don't need to see what I'm doing. Or if the storyteller sees it, you could say, I'm looking at my bank account. But anything you do is taken literally. There is no, oh, well, that was just a joke and everything. No. You said that in character. Now, these are the hardcore role players, where they might even say that every action needs to be acted out. I mean, I've heard stories of these. I haven't gone to any of these hardcore role-playing sessions, but if you go to a game that has intense roleplay, then it may be a turnoff for most players. And that's because when role-playing, people try to view it as acting. The problem is that when you're acting in a controlled environment where people have paid to see something. They know what's going on, and anything that's happened in the play or movie or whatever is scripted. But when you roleplay, nothing is truly controlled. When you're interacting with someone, you don't know how they're going to act. You don't know if you're actually going to be safe. It's not a scripted event. It's not controlled. You're in the action. And a lot of people, when they get into more intense roleplay, forget this. They forget that it's not a closed system, and they can make other people feel uncomfortable and unsafe. This is just something you need to watch out for those more hardcore role-playing groups. So the biggest obstacles that you have is experience for a long-running group with a lot of players, and roleplay for those groups which are intensely into roleplay, that you are always in character, and all it takes is one or two or just a few people to not understand the difference between roleplay and acting. Now, I hope this will help you not make a mistake like some other players have done and join a vampire game and be dissatisfied. Hopefully this gives you an idea of what to look for in a vampire game so that you can have an enjoyable time in Vampire and thrive in the world of darkness. Until next sundown, stay safe.